On this episode of the Second Swing Thoughts podcast, we have a couple interviews on this one. We stop into the Callaway tour truck with Kellen Watson, one of the tour reps, to go over Callaway's approach to fitting their tour pros on a week-to-week basis. And then we also kind of starting a new segment here where we talk about the clubs that won on the PGA Tour with a fitter and get some cool insights into that equipment and how it has performed in the fitting bay. So that and a lot more on this episode of Second Swing Thoughts. Hey golfers, and welcome into another episode of Second Swing Thoughts. Drew Mahold over here, Sean Bauer over there for this episode. We are back once again. We've got a couple of interviews today. Kellen Watson, a Callaway tour rep. Cos Barnett, actually talked to him on the tour truck about kind of their process. So that was fun, just working with Callaway tour pros. And there's some pretty unique insights into that as well. And then we also are going to talk, we're going to have a new segment essentially that we try to dive into just the winning clubs every week. I know we go over the winning, what's in the bag every week, of the winning clubs, but of course to get some more fitting insights on those products and maybe the decisions made as to why a player would play X, Y, or Z. So we're going to dive into that today as well. Should be a good one.
Yeah, really excited for that. We'll have Jake Montgomery on to kind of break down the winning what's in the bag, and it's more just what they're seeing in fitting bays, what types of players these typically fit, So it should be really good. It's taking what happens, on the PGA Tour and relating it back to, us everyday golfers and, just some equipment insights for you to, think of, if you are in the, market for some new clubs. Well, maybe this is a good option for you based on what our fitters see. And then the Callaway tour truck, an interesting conversation. They talk a lot about their data and how they kind of use that to, help optimize performance for their players based on, certain clubs they want to play or how they want to play them and whatnot. So really interesting talk there inside the Callaway tour truck. But let's kick things off with the turn. And we're going to start with the Sanderson Farms Championship on the PGA Tour. Stephen Fisk, a first-time winner.
Yes.
Pretty impressive final 3 rounds. He shot a 2 under 70 on Thursday's opening round, and then he went 7 under, 7 under, 8 under.
That's a lot of birdies.
To win by 2. I think he was down by a couple strokes going into
final day. It became almost a kind of a duel between he and Garrick Higo.
Yeah.
And he ended up just making a few more birdies on Sunday. I think he birdied 4 of his last 5 holes. So that was fun one to watch. I mean, you get 2 guys, especially for Fisk. I mean, Higo's won before on tour, but for Fisk to break through like that in the way he did, making clutch birdies, that's pretty fun. Yeah,
and I think, these fall events, I truly enjoy. One, there's not going to be as many big names out there.
Right.
But it's a lot of young guys or, your career grinders trying to earn their way, onto a full-time, PGA Tour card, get themselves into signature events, and giving yourself a chance to, win a tournament and, who knows what you can do from there. I mean, you look at, guys like Ben Griffin, who kind of came from nowhere, wins a team event, and then all of a sudden wins the Memorial, and a few months later he's playing in the Ryder Cup. Mm-hmm. So, winning can just do so many things for players. And then obviously with the PGA Tour cards, Fisk started 135th in the FedEx Cup fall standings. With this win, moves up to 65. So kind of comfortably in that top 100 for the PGA Tour. And he's actually just, a few spots back of earning a spot into the first 2 signature events. I think it's spots 50 to 60, get in there through that.
Which those are the way they're set up. Getting into those is huge for a lot of these tour guys where you get, obviously, the limited field and, I don't know, some of them have a cut, but it's like a few guys get cut, right? And so there's obviously, of course, bigger purse. So that stuff is significant. I also want to just call out, he mentioned in some of the comments he made when he was done, he lost his dad earlier this year, and then his caddy actually was a caddy for Grayson Murray last year. And so I imagine in many ways, not just for his career, but also personally for both he and his caddy, very cool to win this one, I bet.
Yeah, definitely. And so congratulations to Stephen Fisk. We'll do a quick run through just what's in his bag here. We'll have much more on it later with Jake. But starting off the top of the bag, Mizuno STZ 230. Then he plays a pair of Ping G430 Max fairway woods, going 3 wood and 7 wood. And then he has a nice Mizuno combo set. Of course, he's a Mizuno staffer. So he goes Mizuno Pro 245 4 iron, Pro 243 5 iron, and then MP20 6 to 9 irons. Then he plays some T22 wedges for his pitching wedge, gap wedge, sand wedge. Goes with the Vokey SM10 for his lob wedge, and then he plays an Odyssey White Hot OG Rossi. So, nice setup. And like I said, Mizuno doesn't have quite, they make fantastic clubs, but they don't have quite the staff that a lot of the other, manufacturers have. So, another win for them to go with, the likes of Ben Griffin and, of course, Kashmir Keith. So.
Right. Yeah. I think I also wanted to call out, in addition to the Mizuno driver, and again, we're going to talk about this with Jake, but a couple years ago when Odyssey brought back, or I guess reintroduced White Hot, or did the White Hot OG line, that has been super successful for them. And I think it goes to show just how much that insert on the putter is loved across the tours. It seems like a lot of players off staff are playing those, and of course a lot of players that are on staff are as well. And now they're kind of carrying that into more of their more of their putter series and putter models since then. But I think that was a really successful kind of relaunch, if you will, that they had. So just wanted to give a shout out to that one.
Yeah, absolutely. So then, that was the PGA Tour tournament. Over on the DP World Tour, you had the Dunhill Links Championship, and a very cool event. Obviously finishing up there at St. Andrews. And Robert McIntyre taking home the title, the first Scot to win the event since Colin Montgomery in 2005. And of course, McIntyre had, the Scottish Open win too. He's the first to win both since Colin Montgomery did as well. So pretty cool event. Obviously, no rust from the Ryder Cup.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's fun to watch. And you mentioned to me off camera as well that, Hatton was the runner-up. So it was like these guys, they're not resting. They do their quick celebration, and it sounds like both these guys like to, celebrate quite a bit. And then they get back into it and they perform well right away. We got a winner and a runner-up. I saw something very fascinating on Instagram this morning about Robert McIntyre. I believe he plays a Titleist GT3 driver or GT2.
I think he's in a TSR too.
Oh, is he? TSR, okay. I saw something where basically he was, because of the conditions and or maybe it's just a links golf thing, where he was purposely hitting the ball off the toe. To knock that thing down, low spin, keep it out of the wind a little bit, have that knuckleball effect. And I didn't think of that, but like it makes so much sense. And I imagine other players probably are doing something like that, but it's the complete winning recipe. If you're good enough to just like, I want to hit it off the toe and able to do that,
but
it makes so much sense in links golf to do it that way. So fascinating. I just wanted to call that out because we've talked a lot before in videos or even on the podcast about like the effect of missing towards the toe and stuff. And so that's wanted to call that out. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, and speaking of the Ryder Cup, there will be a Ryder Cup theme to the return of the Skins game.
Yeah.
Of course, the Skins game, if you're unfamiliar with it, it ran on, as an event kind of in the off season. Usually you get some big time players. They play for Skins. You had the likes of, Arnold Palmer, Jack Nicklaus doing it. Tiger Woods did it. It kind of used to be the match before the match. After a 15-year hiatus, it is returning, and it's got 4 players. So it's got Ryder Cup captain Keegan Bradley, U.S. team member Xander Schauffele, and Justin Thomas, as well as maybe the Ryder Cup MVP, Tommy Fleetwood. So those 4 will be competing at Panther National, which is a course that JT helped co-design with Jack Nicklaus. So should be an interesting thing. It'll be on Amazon Prime, Black Friday. So golf still just trying to find ways to, have some events kind of when it's, the
slower time of year.
Yeah, slower time of the year.
Yeah,
so.
I mean, it's fun. I think some of these things I especially enjoy kind of the banter between the players. That's a little bit of, say what you will about like TGL and stuff, but like they get a little bit of that in there as well, of the players talking back and forth. So I'm hoping that's kind of what this is. And of course, that friendly competition, maybe a peek into kind of what these guys will do when the cameras aren't always on them, whether it's practice rounds or maybe they get together between events and do some competing. So hopefully that's kind of what shows out here.
Yeah, so looking forward to that. And that wraps up the turn. And now let's get into our fitting insights with master fitter Jake Montgomery. Of course, you just heard Stephen Fisk's What's in the Bag. Jake's going to sit down. He sits down here with Drew, just kind of talking about, what he's seen out of these specific clubs, maybe pick out some trends he's seen in the bag, break down maybe the shafts, and even, talking about combo sets. So here's master fitter Jake Montgomery.
We now welcome on Mr. Jake Montgomery, fitting manager at the Minneapolis store, today to go over Stephen Fisk's winning What's in the Bag from the Sanderson Farms Championship. An impressive and very, I guess, important win for Stephen. Jake, I know you've looked through the bag a little bit. There's some unique things here. I think I'm going to start at the top with you just because we don't see a lot of these.
Yep.
And it's a winning driver from Mizuno, the STZ 230. I'm sure you've worked with this one a lot less than maybe some other more popular drivers, but what do you know about this one?
Yeah, so the STZ is definitely less common, especially on tour. So it's pretty cool to see someone winning with a Mizuno driver.
Yeah.
What I would say I see with it in the bay a lot of times is it's pretty consistent as far as spin rate goes. It doesn't bounce around a whole lot. Where they lose the battle a lot is kind of in terms of ball speed. Now, he's not a player that's necessarily chasing ball speed. He's got pretty good club head speed already. I find the players that do end up in Mizuno really like the look and or feel a lot. They definitely have a more unique feel where it's almost a bit more of a crack than other drivers at impact. That could be a reason that's kind of leading him into playing that. But I would say, I do some of them in store where, especially if someone's looking for a good deal on a driver, you can pick him up for under $200. So from a value standpoint, there is definitely a selling point there for golfers coming into our stores. But yeah, it's pretty unique to see a Mizuno driver in the winner's circle.
Yeah, you don't see a lot of them. Again, we've talked a little bit about some Mizuno pros that have won recently. I know Keith Mitchell still plays one, and he is one of the longer players on tour. So it's not like they don't provide a punch or some distance to them. But I think it's just you just don't see a lot of them. So I think I wanted to make note of that. Another kind of wrinkle in his bag. So I'm on the golfwrx.com kind of the website, and they have the actual in-hand photos of the clubs.
Yep.
I noticed that in the listing of the products that are in the bag, there's no mention of a 3-iron, and then you look at the photo and you see what looks to be a Mizuno Pro Fly High 3-iron. Also has a 7-wood, so I imagine that's kind of a based on course or weather situation that they're swapping those out. So how often do you have that type of discussion, or even maybe a fitting itself with players, maybe at this level where they're kind of that tuned into their game where they have both options there?
Yeah, so for really elite level players, I am fitting them to have multiple options based on the course setup or conditions. If it's blowing 20 miles an hour out there, you might want to have that driving iron instead of the 7-wood, as it's just going to have a lot more penetrating ball flight. Or if you're looking for something that you can hit just something low and controllable, especially if you're playing some links golf where you just want to have that ball roll a ways and just be pretty accurate, that's when you throw that driving iron in there. Otherwise, if you're playing a longer course, especially a firm one, where you need to get the ball really high and spinning to get it to stop on the greens, that's when you'd kind of pull that 7-wood out.
Yeah, and I think, again, I'm sure they both, we've done all kinds of content on this before, but they probably go a similar distance. It's just a matter of how the ball gets to that distance and what it does once it hits the ground.
Yeah, I bet the carry on them's pretty close.
Yeah.
But there's probably a 30, 40-foot peak height difference and a spin rate variance of at least 500-600 RPMs.
Yeah, because then when you get into his iron set, so if like in the instances where he is playing that Mizuno Pro Fly High, he actually has 4 different irons in his bag.
Yep.
But from the 4-iron all the way down, so he's got the Mizuno Pro 245 4-iron, Mizuno Pro 243 with the 5-iron, and then the MP20 kind of muscle back irons.
Yeah.
From 6 through 9, all with, by the way, KBS C-Taper 130X shafts. Talk to me first on just combo sets. How often are you piecing together 3 different models for a player? I'm sure a lot of times it's 2 irons. How often do you see 3?
I would say 3 irons is definitely more rare. I've done countless sets in a 2 kind of set makeup.
Yep.
The reason for that really is just more forgiveness and ball flight characteristics. The bigger the head gets, the lower center of gravity is going to be, the higher it's going to launch, the more forgiving it's going to be. So in his 3-iron, he's playing that 245, which is a more traditional hollow body iron. He's looking for more forgiveness and just maintaining peak height with that club. When you move into that 243, you're getting still a little bit of forgiveness there, but a lot more consistency, especially when it comes to ball speed and spin. For players on tour, a 4-iron can be a scoring club, so you don't want that to be too jumpy. You still want to have a lot of control there. And then as you kind of get down into the rest of the set, those MP20s, those are your true scoring clubs where consistency, predictability, and shot shaping is really what you're looking for from there. So that's kind of getting into why he's playing a split set like that. I have done a couple scenarios where they have 3 irons in there, especially if 3 or 4 iron is going to be really more of a traditional driving iron. That's when you might see, like in a Titleist, you have a U505
Yep.
and then a T250 and then T150s and
Right.
heck, maybe even a T100 in there.
Yeah, yeah. I mean that's now how these manufacturers are designing series of irons. I mean, this is one where really the only difference that I'm sure he could easily go into Mizuno Pro 241s for those muscle backs. There's probably not a huge difference. I think the main reason is probably the certain shape or something of the MP20 is probably what he likes, but it wouldn't be a huge transition for him to go to the 241s and have the whole set of those Mizuno Pro, 2024 series irons in his bag. And then I wanted to ask you too, because kind of going into his wedges, plays a few Mizuno T22s, but I thought I've heard different perspectives on this of playing different shafts, maybe something softer in wedges.
Yes.
But he's got, according to Golf Tour X, the same shafts in his wedges, which is KBS C-Taper 130X. Again, what would be the reason to play the same, or maybe what would be the reason that players would opt for something softer?
Yeah, so I mean, the first thing I noticed when I looked at his bag is he plays extremely stiff shafts from his 60 degree all the way through his driver. In all his woods, he has TX, and then he's playing C-Taper 130X.
And they're all heavy, too.
Yes. C-Tapers are about as stiff, low launch, low spin of an iron shaft as you can get. If I have someone that's got a ton of speed and they're trying to kill spin and kill height, C-Taper is one of the first shafts that I go to. And yes, traditionally players do opt for something a little bit softer. It was kind of popularized by Tiger Woods when he was playing X100s all the way through, switched into some S400s and those higher lofted wedges, had immediate success with them. I actually heard that story directly from Bob Vokey, so that's a pretty cool little tidbit there. It's definitely something I recommend to a lot of players as well. I find that it just gives you, one, a little bit more spin, and two, a bit more feel around the greens as well. I'm traditionally not trying to drop weight too much because I think weight is very important to tempo, and tempo is key when it comes to chipping and pitch shots. But giving something a little softer is a bit more responsive, especially when you're not full swinging your 56 or your 60 all too often, where a softer shaft might give you a little bit more feel on a partial shot. For him, I think that he just likes the feeling of something really rigid in his hands when it comes to how that shaft is going to deliver to the golf ball.
Yeah, and then, because I think that's a good point. I've done both, actually, and I think that I like, especially as someone who likes to really open and close and get creative with my 60 degree, it is nice to have a little softer feeling shaft.
Yeah.
Kind of where you can feel a little bit where that club head is when you're hitting the big flop shot. And last thing I want to ask you about was just the putter, and I had made this comment as well, but the White Hot OG series, I feel like Odyssey did a great job with that, and I feel like you see a lot of those putters out there. Have you had similar successes with that, with kind of the players that you're working with, and especially when it comes to the feel of that insert?
Yeah, I mean, it's still one of our better selling putting lines as far as used clubs go. They really knocked that out of the park as far as looks. I mean, in the name OG, they really kind of go back to the original there as far as look and feel goes. And then that White Hot insert, I mean, it's up there in terms of putter lore, where, I mean, that insert's been around for such a long time. Players keep going back to it because of the way that it feels and the way that it sounds coming off the face. If you're a player that's looking for an insert, I mean, Odyssey is going to be one of the first things that you take a look at.
Yeah, it's an awesome putter insert. I mean, so many players, and the reason they brought it back is because so many players were opting for either putting that in their putter or opting for really old, Odyssey putter that still had that insert. But that's a look at Stephen Fisk's What's in the Bag. Some kind of unique insights there from Jake. So, Jake, we thank you for joining. And of course, golfers, coming up next here, we stopped on the Callaway Tour truck for a discussion with Kellen Watson on their process fitting Tour Pro. So stay tuned for that.
All right, everybody, we are in the Callaway Tour truck with Kellen Watson, a tour rep for Callaway, player development, and we're in the top level of the Callaway Tour truck. Let's start here, because I know one of the things that you guys have been kind of integrating into your team here is kind of this holistic approach to tour performance, player performance, particularly around data, metrics, strokes gained, things like that. talk a little bit about maybe that process and maybe some of the meetings you have right here as guys look to attack a course.
Yeah, we do. We have a couple guys back in Carlsbad that really crunch numbers, and you can, I mean, if you can understand all the statistics that are brought to us through either the PGA Tour or ShotLink, it's it's a large amount of data that needs to be kind of cycled down to a point where it's understandable not only by us but when we relate it to the players. Mm-hmm. So it's been a huge help for them to kind of collect it, analyze it, and then kind of summarize it in a way that we can easily process that and then give to the player. There's a lot more. There's kind of a when you're in this kind of this level of golf and these guys, the statistics. It's a lot easier for us to interpret what they're saying, because some people kind of get carried away with what just the statistics say in general. So it's stroke gains off the tee, strokes gain this. So there could be a guy say their strokes gain is kind of on the lower side off the tee, but you know that essentially that's all based off of all the players that they're playing against. So, and we went over this maybe last week, a couple weeks ago. It's just like strokes gain were down off the tee, but I mean, when you got to the point of it, when you're looking at total driving efficiency, he was actually in the top 20 on tour. So there's a lot of ways to kind of take all of this data, and for us to interpret it to them, that makes a little bit more sense, because you get a guy who's down on, strokes gain off the tee, but efficiency's way up. That means obviously it's not as fast as the 20-some, 33-year-old kids that are they're swinging at 125, 130 miles an hour. So there's a lot of stuff that kind of you can speak to some, but you might essentially let a couple others go. Also, you get statistics that might not match up with what the coach and the player are doing at that time. So it is great to have those guys back in Carlsbad kind of crunching and analyzing everything that's going on and putting them into decks that are very easy for us to interpret and then also to share with the player. I think it's something that we kind of try to get their whole team involved with, whether it be their swing coach or essentially maybe it's their physio that needs to work on the body to get a point to where we can make things really happen. But it gives us a very solid baseline to not only tell our players, but to tell maybe non-staffers that are using our equipment too, this is where we can improve, this is where we can make things more efficient. So it has integrated itself kind of slowly, but we've kind of run with the ball since we've kind of gotten this whole statistics department.
Right.
So,
it kind of is a unique approach, right?
Yeah.
You guys are making adjustments to the golf clubs. You guys are looking at, lie angles, loft, ball flight, but now you have some data to sort of back that up.
Right.
Identify some trends and maybe even make some tweaks to equipment that players aren't seeing, maybe even without that data.
Right.
It's a cool, holistic approach to playing better golf out here on tour and hopefully winning tournaments and making money for the guys. That's a big
it's always
deal.
nice to it's always nice to celebrate on like an early Monday morning when we get to the next week, in general. So,
well, let's talk a little bit about just the season in general. We're getting down to the end of the year. Callaway Elite. Talk a little bit about some tour adoption. What has been the overall feedback? What are guys really gravitating towards in that new lineup?
It was a good thing to kind of see a bit of a big change in kind of, especially our fairway woods. There was a bunch of tour feedback over the last couple of years that shapes are good, sounds good, ball flight's good, but we needed to just kind of tweak just a couple things to kind of satisfy kind of the core group of players that we do have. You always have your outliers of this is what I need, but usually you have a pretty good consensus of people that'll give probably the same feedback. So the kind of the standing wave that we've integrated in some of our fairway woods has been it's been a huge development for some guys, and it's been kind of just like an incremental growth to some other guys, but it's fit our staff a little bit better than what we've had in the past. And then kind of move on to the driver. The shapes really haven't changed for us too much. Obviously the the AI 10X Smart Face has changed just a little bit from last year. Just a couple more iterations that they've gone through and collecting the data on hits, across the face. And obviously out here, we don't stray too far from the center. So there's ways for us to optimize what they're doing with the AI models to kind of, get everybody in a better place when it comes to all their drivers. Shape-wise, really haven't changed much. The standard elite, which has been kind of a surprise to us, I would say. Very forgiving, very fast, very low spinning. So that's kind of a huge kind of added bonus to us. Some players prefer the look, some players don't prefer the look, but I mean, that's what you get every year with some stuff. But that was kind of we had a couple last year in like an AI Smoke Max, and it kind of correlated to that too. But we've seen a little bit faster swing speeds out of that, a little bit faster ball speeds, a little bit less spin than what was last year. So it's kind of been a step up, but kind of the mainstays have not changed dramatically enough to really see like there's a discernible difference, but it's not, it's not standoutish.
But interesting. I mean, a lot of these guys obviously chasing low spin, gravitate towards the triple diamond.
Right.
But as you maybe noted here, some guys are finding they can get that low spin with the added forgiveness just in that elite standard head.
Yeah, and but it's a big thing to obviously our first job for us is, it's not even performance-wise, it's showing the player, right? I mean, the aesthetics of the whole thing, if they don't love it, then I would take it right away, because there's no reason for them to hit something that they don't like looking at.
Right.
So it was kind of, at the beginning, it was kind of like, and we know all these guys to a point where we know, we're going to give them this head, and that's pretty much going to be it. We're going to kind of limit our options, right, just to get us a better baseline of what they're feeling. So
first and foremost, that shape matters. At address,
shape
if
matters,
they don't like
look
it,
matters. Yeah,
we're not even going.
We're not even going to touch it.
Let's go back a little bit to fairway woods. I know the trend across tour is these higher lofted metal woods.
Oh,
and,
yes.
7s, 9 woods, those types of things. Historically, guys have been maybe hybrids, maybe some long irons with a little bit, more lower CG, higher launching, but the trend has been to those 7, 9 woods. What have you guys seen here in the Callaway Tour Truck?
Same. I mean, it's the same. It's pretty much the same thing across the board. It's like gone are kind of the days of like a 3+ or something. Then we might see 1 or 2. It might get down to maybe 12 or 13 degrees on just a standard stock fairway wood. With the kind of the announcement and the kind of introduction of the mini driver, we've kind of seen like there's a bigger array of what's going on and how to kind of combat kind of any stage that they play on. But everybody's faster.
Yeah.
They're younger, they're faster. Even if they're older, they're faster still. Workouts have been huge, and physios and moving the body and biomechanics. It's just sometimes the 3 wood just goes way too far.
Sure.
So we bump it up to the essentially a 4 wood or a higher lofted 3, and then obviously that plays into kind of that next subset of where are you going from there. Are you going to a 5 wood? That'd be too close. So let's 7 wood, 9 wood. And there still are some guys that'll ask for a 9 wood or a 7 wood at specific kind of majors where they think the rough is going to be this and they can chop it out. That used to be, the 7 wood, 9 wood thing used to be commonplace at like a US Open, say 10 years ago, because it's, chop it out of the rough, try to just move it forward. But as these guys get faster, the balls are, and everything they're doing, the golf ball and everything else, it's just a tick up in loft is never going to hurt.
Helpful, and you increase that stopping power. They can get at pins from further distances away. Leads to better scoring kind of across the board.
Yeah, and then the fairway wood thing is just I go back and forth with this too, because there's a lot of times that there's either a multi-use to it or there's a single use to it. So I mean, you got some guys that are like a 50-50 tee club, fairway club. And then you got some guys that are like a 70 off the tee, 30 off the fairway. I'm
Sure.
rarely going to try to go at this on a par 5, and those are usually the guys that have a little bit more strength to it. So it's usually driver and then like a 5-wood into a par 5. And then you introduce the mini driver into that whole equation, and that kind of gives you a completely different look to it. So now it's been if it wasn't like the UW that we do have, which is very versatile in and of itself, that lends itself to making our lives a little bit easier because it's not the bulky kind of fairway wood shape. So we have the options that we have, I think, pretty damn good.
Right, the options are endless, and these guys are taking advantage of that. You mix in some analytics and some data. It's hard to stop, and it's an easy formula to shoot good scores out here on tour.
Right.
All right, well, last question for you. Kind of what's next? Maybe not in terms of clubs, but how do you guys continue to elevate and make these players play the best golf that they can play?
Well, that's I mean, there's so many parts that need to come together, harmoniously, that we can be kind of just like a small cog in the whole thing, or we can be a bigger cog. It's just, taking from what they've done this year, kind of blending that into what they're trying to do coach-wise or body-wise. It really needs to come together as kind of like more of a team unit.
Yeah.
So you can look at the stats all day long, and I appreciate the fact that we have that access. But at some point, you're kind of like, some of those guys would be making kind of swing changes during, the biggest part of the year. It's just like, can we reflect back on what was good, reflect back on what didn't work so well? So what comes next is kind of it would be more of a reflection period of just kind of amassing everybody together and just figuring out what can we do going forward.
Sure.
But then also at the same time, we got another week, and then it's like maybe another 3 weeks, and then a whole new season starts again. So it's like, can you make a different change? Can you make a drastic change to something to kind of further your career down the line? But for some of the guys that'll be in the playoffs, it'll be a very sparse schedule in the fall. So they can go and do whatever they need, and then we'll see them, early November, December, wherever they may be.
Sure.
And we'll travel to them and try to integrate all the new stuff that we will have for next year.
Yeah.
Because the cycle is never ending, so it's always it always keeps you on your toes. So
No doubt. So bringing together the physio, the swing change, the coaches, the data, the tour truck, all to play
Everything.
better golf. And you guys certainly have the setup here at the Callaway Tour Truck. We really appreciate your time today, and
anytime.
thanks for showing us around and giving us a little insight into what these guys are facing week in and week out.
Thank you.
And that was Kellen Watson on the Callaway Tour Truck with Koss. Obviously, we've done a couple of these interviews throughout the year with the guys on the tour trucks and sort of their process. I think there's a couple of unique things, though, that Callaway does, maybe slightly differently than the others, but nonetheless, cool to get their feedback and kind of that behind-the-scenes look.
Yeah, in the day of, analytics and data, especially in sports, when it comes to, every piece of, it doesn't matter which sport you are, everything is being broken down to see if you can find some statistical advantage. And I did think it was interesting, just the conversation he had about a player who, was finishing the lower half in strokes gained. But when you looked at driver, off the tee efficiency, so, finding fairways, putting yourself in scoring position, he was actually ranking in the top 20 on tour. So it's kind of a, and golf is, 6 inches between the ears is a lot where it's played. So sometimes, not worried about, I'm losing strokes on the field from the tee, but rather looking at it as like, I'm putting myself in play. I'm giving myself a chance because I'm being efficient off the tee. And he had kind of mentioned it, like, there's guys, these young kids are coming out on a tour and they're swinging 125 miles per hour. Like, if you're a 10, 15-year-old vet, odds are you're not creating that kind of power anymore.
Right.
But maybe you can control your ball a little better, flight a little better, play to the hole a little better just as you mature. So really interesting kind of insight there on how they use that data to kind of help their players. So.
Yeah, I think there's listening to that, and then we've talked with Larry Bobka before, or even like I remember this conversation with Mark Brooks when he was on the channel about like back in the day, testing and fitting clubs, just a completely different world. You didn't have launch monitors. It was, you talked to Larry and it was like, yeah, we just watched how the ball flew on the driving range and where the ball may have ended up out on the golf course. And that was kind of how you tested equipment and did club fittings. And so, in a span of 20 years, it's changed tremendously for sure.
So really good stuff there. So what else do we have on the YouTube channel?
YouTube channel. We had a really fun video go up just now with Sam Udovich. He is a now golfer at TCU, one of the most decorated junior golfers really ever in Minnesota, given everything he accomplished. Now he transitions to college golf. We caught up with him several weeks ago out at the Royal and did a couple of things with him. One of them was playing a set of clubs that's older than he is, actually. Just put together a set of Titleist clubs, a set for him, and everything was basically 2005 or older. And he did really well with them. And it's funny in the comments already, we got people being like, well, clearly it's the golfer, with his swing, you can play with anything. And I think there's some truth to that. So that was fun to watch. Also some fun comparisons coming up on the YouTube channel. And of course we've got, Coy Parrish Get Fit Like a Pro videos as well. You got to go check those out. Coy, of course, All-American college football player for the Gophers, University of Minnesota, and it's fun to see him get dialed in there with Tyler Fitzel.
Yeah, for a guy that's just picked up golf for 4 years now, he can swing a golf club.
Yes, he can.
So, really good stuff there. On the Second Swing side, it is swing days this week, going on until Friday. There's a big, 10% trade-in bonus. So any clubs you trade in, you get 10% more value. There's also some clubs that are going for, great deals. So if you're in the market for some new clubs or just looking to, maybe trade in some older ones for some store credits, now is the time. So head to secondswing.com for more. And also make sure you check out the Second Swing women's site. It's a brand new site of ours exclusively for the women golfer. So not only equipment, but there's specific fitting insights in there. There's specific content. A lot of different things all catered to, the female golfer. Really, really cool site. I know that our team worked very, very hard to put that all together. So make sure you check that out. And that about wraps up this week's show.
Yeah, subscribe wherever you can and need to subscribe for us, right? YouTube and or wherever you are listening, if that is your choice of consuming the show. So we will see you next week on the Second Swing Thoughts podcast.